Spoiler alert, season 2 is on the way, so in the end, he obviously didn't himself, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up. I know he's your friend, but I don't care.
Some breaking news right now. Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life while he was behind bars here in New York City. Epstein was facing trafficking charges.
Next to the new questions around the investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein, the accused trafficker stunning the world, taking his own life in a Manhattan jail cell. The official autopsy results just announced by the medical examiner and what his legal team is vowing.
December 3rd, a sleek private jet hidden behind a shell company's name lands quietly at London's Heathrow Airport. No cameras, no reporters, not even a whisper in the press. Only one passenger stepped off. A Hollywood legend who hadn't touched European soil in over 10 years. Just 3 days later, that same star's $12 million Los Angeles mansion went up for sale. But here's the kicker. It was listed for barely half its worth. Their publicist stayed silent, dodging every question. Because this wasn't some casual move or secret getaway. This was something way deeper.
We've seen dozens of new photos we haven't seen before of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with very high-profile people, celebrities, people like Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, like you showed, also like British royalty and actors. All of that we sort of knew was happening. I want to highlight specifically two for the public interest, and that is President Clinton and President.
In exactly 16 days, the U.S. government is set to unseal the final batch of Jeffrey Epstein's confidential files, and people are vanishing fast. The names popping up in those documents, they aren't just random mentions. These are the same folks who spent years making sure those secrets never saw the light of day. We've watched this play out before. Sudden disappearances, rushed home sales, carefully polished statements about new beginnings abroad. But this time, it's not coincidence, it's coordination. Every move feels planned to the minute. Ellen DeGeneres, she's tucked away in the Cotswolds, saying she left over election fatigue. Richard Gere dumped his Connecticut estate for a loss, claiming it's all for family reasons. Eva Longoria slashing prices on her Beverly Hills mansion, calling America dystopian. And Rosie O'Donnell, she's gone off to Ireland. Something big's going down, and they're not waiting around to explain it.
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy.
They all swear they're never coming back. On their own, these moves might look like personal choices, but together, it's a full-on Hollywood evacuation. And here's the wild part. The timing lines up perfectly with December 19th, the deadline for the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Congress didn't just ask for those files, they demanded them, threatening contempt charges if they're not released. When Senator Chuck Schumer went on live TV and told the White House, release everything or face consequences, he wasn't bluffing.
Tend towards cynicism or skepticism. You might wonder, is everything about Epstein and his powerful male friends, is that coming out? That remains.
Because buried deep in those documents are flight logs, financial records, and sealed complaints naming over 150 big names, not just associates, but alleged participants. The people fleeing right now, they know exactly what's coming next. The contradictions are screaming for attention. Ellen's team keeps saying she's avoiding the U.S. for political reasons, but court filings tell a story. She's dodging legal papers from a car crash lawsuit. Nobody goes into hiding over a fender bender. Richard Gere's inner circle claims he's off to Spain to be closer to family, but the timeline tells a different tale.
Seeing is apparently not everything. We've got indications from the Department of Justice that there are things that are going to be withheld, at least, or handed out at a later date. Now, the law in this case that was passed by Congress and signed by President Trump required that all the Epstein files be released by midnight tonight, Friday, December 19th.
Every one of these high-profile exits started the day after the DOJ confirmed the December 19th release date. That's not coincidence, that's coordination. And it's not just where they're going, it's how they're leaving. They're not packing bags, they're cashing out, selling off properties, dissolving trusts, and funneling money into offshore accounts. These aren't the moves of people planning a peaceful getaway. They're moves made by people bracing for a storm. 3 years ago, Ricky Gervais stood on that Golden Globe stage and looked straight into a crowd of Hollywood elites, the same crowd that's now scrambling for cover. Something he said that night might have hit too close to home. I know he's your friend.
Continue to bring you some of these big top headlines that we are following for you. And one of them, the vault is open for more of the Epstein files to come.
The moment those words hit the air, the laughter vanished. He wasn't cracking a joke, he was calling them out. When Ricky Gervais said Jeffrey Epstein didn't harm himself, the cameras caught a crowd of stone-faced Hollywood executives who knew exactly what that meant. And now, those same faces are desperately trying to secure exit visas, scrambling to vanish from the spotlight. Gervais wasn't roasting them, he was warning them. The truth was on its way, and once it hit, every secret they'd buried would come spilling out.
We have a congressional act now to requiring the release, but they're going to say, you know
subject
what?
To
Tom
redaction.
Hanks, it's unfair that he was mentioned because he was eating Skittles.
Subject to redaction. Subject to redaction.
And we all know what that means. That's to protect.
That's why I'm saying you will never be satisfied with what's released.
Fast forward to today, and those files aren't just a threat anymore. They're a ticking countdown. Survivors like Maria Farmer, whose 1996 complaint against Epstein has just been verified in the newly unsealed documents, are finally being heard. Her attorney, Jennifer Freeman, told CNN that federal agents failed her client for years, and she's not the only one saying it. Lisa Phillips went live this week and said she and others are putting together their own list, naming those who abused them and the ones who turned a blind eye. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Her words shook the internet. So when we see celebrities suddenly offloading homes, deleting every trace of their online lives, and flying off to countries with no extradition treaties, we've got to wonder, what do they know that the rest of us don't? And let's not ignore the money trail. It's just as suspicious. Financial experts are pointing to odd transfers and off-book payments, connecting big names to Epstein-linked accounts. Blake Lively once showed up at a private event at just 25, hosted by Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, and a crowd that reads like a who's who of scandal. Something's brewing, and it's bigger than anyone expected.
These things like Epstein, and there's probably a bunch of other similar operations that are being run, they provide you with like a really good time, or maybe you're a high profile, extremely wealthy individual, and it's hard for you to get hosed. And some guy tells you, hey, we've got everything covered. You know, you come to my island, nothing, you know, what happens on the island stays on the island.
Woody Allen was caught on camera multiple times inside Epstein's Manhattan mansion, and that's just the start. Les Wexner, the powerful founder of Victoria's Secret, reportedly brought 11 models to Epstein's private island, a trip that, looking back, feels way less like a business getaway and way more like a dark, twisted casting call. Chris Trucker was seen flying on Epstein's jet for what was described as a charity mission to Africa. But guess who else was on board? Kevin Spacey. Prince Andrew, he's already paid millions to quietly settle lawsuits. Donald Trump, 26 flights on Epstein's plane. Bill Clinton, the exact same number, 26. These are random coincidences, they're connections. And when you line them up beside the current Hollywood migration, Ellen off to the UK, Gere in Spain, Longoria, I in Mexico, O'Donnell hiding out in Ireland, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. It's a web that's been spinning right in front of us for decades. But what's even more chilling than the names we already know are the names we don't. The Department of Justice's first public dump of Epstein files ran hundreds of pages, and more than 500 of those pages completely blacked out. One document marked Grand Jury NY stretched 119 pages long, and every single line was redacted. Another batch, 255 pages, totally blanked out. Officials claim those redactions are to protect survivors. But come on, entire transcripts wiped clean? You gotta ask yourself, who else is hiding in there and why are they still being protected? Lawmakers on both sides are starting to lose patience. Representatives like Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie are accusing the previous administration of breaking the law by withholding key evidence. Senator Schumer slammed the release, calling it a mountain of blacked-out pages that mocks transparency. Meanwhile, survivors have had enough. They're done waiting. They're taking matters into their own hands, going public and naming names on their own terms. They've made it clear, if the files won't give up the truth, they will. And that brings us to the island, the place that started it all. The newest photos leaked from Epstein's private Caribbean hideaway are chilling, and not just because of what's in them. Inside those luxurious bedrooms, investigators found strange medical devices, including a full dentist chair sitting in a room where no dental license ever existed. On a chalkboard, scrawled in messy handwriting, were the words Fin, intellectual deception, and power. What kind of place was this?
There was new names in some of the emails that I think investigators need to look at. In particular, I jumped on the name of a modeling agent who, in a similar fashion to Jean-Luc Brunel, who brought underage girls from overseas to Jeffrey Epstein for abuse. There was another man. What was interesting about this other individual is that he also apparently provided young models for Donald Trump's modeling agents.
One shot shows a phone with speed dial buttons, the names blurred out. Next to it, travel papers, guest lists, and photos of high-profile visitors, all people who've spent years trying to erase their connection to Epstein. But those images, they're still sitting right there in the files.
We know for a fact that Stephen Hawking attended a science event on the island. That's verifiable. But what about the others? The ones who weren't there to talk science or research? The ones who jetted in, stayed for days, and vanished without a trace or explanation? When you see a bedroom fitted with restraints, a library stacked with first editions of Lolita, and even a bathroom with a hidden camera wired into the wall, you can't just ask what happened there. You've got to ask who else knew. And that takes us straight back to this Hollywood exodus, because when people see a storm this big coming, they don't just pack a bag, they erase themselves. They cut ties, dump property, and disappear before anyone can grab hold of them.
Is and never was part of the Epstein files. She was sentenced in 2025. This was an interview by Trump's lawyer to protect Trump from the fallout about the Epstein files. What this really is nothing but a sketchy PR stunt by the Department of Justice. And we have seen this movie before. The Maxwell interview is to the Epstein files what the Barr letter was to the Mueller investigation.
Ellen's publicist insists she's hiding out in the UK for political reasons, but insiders claim she's been meeting with British lawyers about privacy protections that don't even exist in the US. Richard Gere's sudden decision to sell his Connecticut estate at a loss? That doesn't look like a lifestyle change, it looks like a financial purge. Eva Longoria calling America dystopian while chopping millions off her Beverly Hills listing isn't just venting, it's a coded signal. And Rosie O'Donnell saying she's never coming back. That's not retirement. That sounds more like a confession. They're not just fleeing the country, they're escaping the jurisdiction. Because once those unsealed files drop, every legal domino starts toppling one by one. And if your name's buried in those pages, you don't want to be anywhere near a U.S. courtroom when it all comes crashing down. So the real question isn't just who's running, it's who's still standing still. The ones who haven't run yet, the ones still sipping lattes in LA or walking red carpets in New York, they're either clueless about what's about to explode or they actually think they're untouchable. But here's the truth about those Epstein files. They don't just list names, they connect them. They show links, money trails, and patterns that turn rumors into receipts. For decades, these people have moved in the shadows, untouchable and insulated. But once those files are fully open, there's no hiding behind PR teams or fancy lawyers. When you spot Blake Lively's name on a guest list with Epstein and Weinstein, or see records of Woody Allen making repeated trips to that Manhattan mansion, or flight logs showing both Clinton and Trump taking the same jet 26 times, you're not just seeing bad optics, you're seeing evidence. And evidence doesn't care about your reputation or your press agent.
was involved in. And that should all be something that the Treasury Department, the FBI can get access to, because in the meantime, what we're left with is Ghislaine Maxwell effectively downplaying this whole thing. Yeah, he was a he hid it from everybody. Nobody else was involved. There's no proof of anything else. There's no blackmail. There's no foreign intelligence tie.
Right now, behind closed doors somewhere in Hollywood, panic meetings are happening. Lawyers are on conference calls, assistants are shredding papers, and publicists are whispering damage control plans. The few who haven't bolted yet are asking the same question over and over. Do I stay and fight, or do I disappear before it's too late? Because the countdown isn't just ticking, it's screaming. December 19th isn't a deadline, it's a detonation. When those files finally drop, the names inside won't just be exposed, they'll be pursued. Survivors have waited long enough, and the public is tired of polished lies and no-comment statements. The ones who thought they dodged accountability are the same ones quietly buying one-way tickets tonight. The real question now is how many more will join them before the files hit the light of day, and who's going to be the first to crack under the pressure? Richard Gere didn't just sell his Connecticut estate, he torched its value. A $20 million mansion listed for just $10.75 million, cash only. That's not a sale, that's a fire alarm. And he's far from the only one. The pattern's repeating: fast sales, hidden transfers, and sudden moves abroad. This isn't coincidence anymore, it's desperation. In just the past 30 days, 3 more A-listers have either dumped their luxury homes for way under market value or moved their money offshore fast. Why? Because once the DOJ unseals those Epstein files, every single financial tie connected to that network.
Her testimony that there is an effort to clear Trump specifically. A lot of the questions are specifically about Trump. A lot of the answers very complimentary even in particular sections to him. But you just made the point to me that she's actually doing even
turns into a smoking gun. And if your name shows up on even one of those documents, you do not want to be holding major assets in the U.S. when the subpoenas start dropping. The timing is too precise to be coincidence. These aren't distress sales, they're distress signals. The buyers snapping up these properties, shell companies, all hiding behind blank ownership records. Because when you're moving money this quickly, you don't want a paper trail, you want an escape route. Now let's talk about those redactions, the blacked out pages that have everyone talking. The DOJ insists they're censoring names to protect victims, but survivors like Maria Farmer, whose 1996 complaint about Epstein was ignored for years, are saying something completely different. Her lawyer, Jennifer Freeman, told CNN that the redactions aren't about privacy, they're about protection, but not for the survivors. She called the whole thing a cover-up. And it's not hard to see why, when more than 550 pages are fully blacked out, including a 119-page grand jury transcript. You have to ask the obvious: who are they really protecting? Because the survivors aren't waiting around anymore. They're building their own list, and insiders claim it includes names that could shake Hollywood straight to its core. So when you see celebrities suddenly moving fortunes overseas into countries with no extradition treaties, don't call it paranoia. Call it preparation. They already know what's buried in those files, and they know the storm that's coming. Senator Chuck Schumer didn't just ask for the full release, he dared the administration to withhold it, warning of legal fallout if they tried to hide anything again. And there's a reason he's pressing so hard. The DOJ's been caught playing this game before. Back in 2020, they swore there was no client list. Then a whistleblower dropped proof showing they'd had one the entire time. Now they're back at it again. More redactions, more secrecy. Even Republican lawmakers like Thomas Massie are calling it out, labeling the latest release a blatant failure to comply with the law.
Forced the research that I did on my book that Jeffrey Epstein has always viewed himself as smarter than everybody else, and he also has collected people all along the way, particularly over the 2 decades through his trafficking. And that was always to get secrets and bits of information about individuals that he could pass to other people. He trafficked.
Every clue, every move, every blackout, it's all leading to something big. The celebrities making a run for it, they're not just guessing what's inside those Epstein files. They know, because they helped keep those secrets buried for years. Bill Clinton logged 26 flights on Epstein's private jet with multiple stops at that infamous island. Woody Allen was caught in photos over and over again at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, the same place where survivors have described encounters too disturbing to even imagine. And now what? Both their teams have gone completely silent, because when those files finally drop, it's not just about who they knew, it's about what they did. The political game surrounding this is ruthless. The Epstein Files Transparency Act didn't just pass, it was pushed through Congress with almost total bipartisan support. That means both sides wanted it. Both sides knew what was coming. But the DOJ, still stalling, still hiding behind national security excuses to block documents that are decades old. What could possibly still be that sensitive unless it exposes names they don't want out? Meanwhile, survivors are done waiting. Lisa Phillips, one of the women who came forward, went on national TV this week and said she and others are creating their own list, a list of people they say abused them, protected abusers, or paid to silence the truth. We know.
Names, she said. Many of us were harmed by them. That statement sent shockwaves through every Hollywood boardroom.
Stephanie, there have also been more cases filed in court with those accusers attempting to go after potential co-conspirators.
That's exactly right, Whit. 2 more women are suing Epstein's estate. They say they were recruited by an unnamed Epstein employee. Now, this is in addition to the lawsuit filed against Epstein's longtime friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is also accused of recruiting for him. Maxwell denied.
So when you see someone like Rosie O'Donnell, who's been a Hollywood insider for over 30 years, suddenly swears she's never coming back to America, you gotta ask yourself, is she running from the files or from the names inside them? Let's start connecting the dots. Bill Clinton's 26 recorded flights on Epstein's jet, not random, not a coincidence, that's a pattern. Woody Allen's repeated visits to that Manhattan townhouse, same thing, not chance, but consistency. And then there's the most bizarre piece of evidence, Epstein's so-called birthday book, found locked in his personal safe. Inside were handwritten notes from Clinton, from Trump, and most shocking of all, a sketch of a nude woman signed Donald. The White House denies Trump drew it, but handwriting experts who reviewed it aren't convinced. Add to that the now unsealed email where Epstein reportedly told Ghislaine Maxwell Trump knew about the girls, and suddenly this stops being rumor and starts looking like a network, one built not just on association, but complicity. Every flight log, every photo, every scribbled message, it all ties together. And when the files go public, those connections won't just haunt reputations, they'll rewrite history. These aren't just bad optics, they're potential criminal exposures. The stars sprinting for the exits right now, they're the ones who know exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. Survivors aren't sitting back waiting on the DOJ anymore. They're stepping up, taking control, and going straight for justice. Their lawyers are already drafting lawsuits, testimonies are being recorded, and this time, no one's getting redacted. They're dropping real names and real stories without fear. So when we see Ellen DeGeneres tucked away in the UK, Richard Gere dumping properties left and right, or Ava Longoria whispering about America being dystopian, this isn't celebrity retirement, it's celebrity retreat. These aren't peaceful goodbyes, they're tactical exits before the storm hits. Because the survivors list isn't just a warning, it's a promise. And even if half of what's being whispered is true, some of Hollywood's biggest names aren't just leaving the country, they're running before the people they hurt finally say their names out loud. But here's where things get darker, way darker. The DOJ can black out names all they want, but they can't black out memories. And the survivors remember everything. The parties, the private jets, the powerful men who looked the other way while it all happened. Annie Farmer told CNN that Epstein's operation was far bigger than anyone realizes. She said there were hundreds of young women, not just in Florida, but in New York, Los Angeles, and even in London. And the men tied to it, some of them are still in power today. So when you see a sudden wave of A-listers selling off mansions, wiping their social media clean and fleeing to Europe, you have to ask, Are they running from the files or from the voices that are finally ready to speak? The clock's almost out of time. December 19th isn't just deadline, it's Judgment Day. The ones who thought they were untouchable are the same ones booking one-way flights at midnight, desperate to vanish before the truth lands. But here's the thing about the truth. It doesn't care about borders. It doesn't care about redactions or PR spin. And when it finally comes out, and it will, there won't be a single place left to hide. So before those files hit the light, ask yourself, how many more will disappear? How many more names will be scrubbed before the truth explodes across the world? What are they really running from? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think will be exposed when the files go live? Whose name are you waiting to see surface first? And if you want us to keep digging into this story, hit that like, subscribe, and share button. It helps this investigation keep going strong. Because this story, it's far from over. Stay alert, stay safe, and remember, the powerful only run when they're scared. And right now, they're running fast.